hard time overcoming. And there's a script for all of it, for every single scenario. There really is. And if you're prepared for those 2, possibly 3 different routes your conversation can go in that given scenario, nothing's going to surprise you. And I'm to the point now where I'm going on 2 listing appointments tomorrow, and I'm going on one with a new team member. And I was talking to him about it, and I said, I go to listing presentations now, and I want somebody to throw me a curveball.
Please.
I want to hear an objection that I've never heard before, because I want to master that response too. Yeah. Look at that. The 2-seamer. Heck yeah.
Ready.
Get after it.
So no, but guys, I've got a long list, and I've come prepared with notes for Jay, but we really do want to know, like, what is it that you're hearing too. So we've got plenty of questions to ask and objections to throw, and jump in and tell me what y'all's are at any point ongoing. And if you think of perhaps other ones, just jump in. Cool. So if you started with listings. So let's talk about listings. So we've got, I want the number one thing that people are afraid of, that they're going to hear is, I understand, is discount. So Jay, thank you. That's all, thank you for the information. That is great. And I know that there are other agents that will reduce their commission because I'm buying with you too. Like, I get that. So what can we do?
Okay. So not talking to you as a seller, I'm talking to you as the agent right now. Having your intro script into a listing, I'll just outline what I do. I walk into the house every single time. I have 4 things. I have my iPad that I actually do my presentation on. I have a folder that's got all the comps. I've got another folder that's got seller's disclosure, listing agreement, all that stuff. And then I've got a glossy cover of all the comps, pictures, and everything like that. First thing I do is walk in, compliment them on their house, thank them for their time. I'm going to ask them, hey, where are we going to sit, by the way, to go over everything? I'd love to put some things down. I'd love for you to show me around. So at that point, I'm walking around, I'm making notes about the house, looking for deficiencies, looking for really cool upgrades and things like that. But more importantly, I'm trying to build a rapport with them. Just trying to create a personal attachment with them. And when you sit down and you start going through your presentation, this is why your presentation is so stinking important, because a lot of times you're going to overcome the potential objections they may ask you before they even come up. So something I always tell people when I go into a listing is, I voluntarily, and it kind of takes them aback sometimes, I'll say, I encourage you to talk to 3 or 4 different agents. I'm not telling you right now to sign with me. I'm not high pressure by any stretch. I encourage you to talk to 3 or 4 agents. Make sure you're having them show you exactly what they do and the results they provide you. So I talk about all the things we do for our sellers that other agents don't. And I say we do things that most agents don't, won't, or can't do for their clients. In fact, we spend X number of dollars out of our pocket on every one of our listings before we actually go live in marketing. Most other agents don't do that stuff. And it's proven in our results. That's one of the graphs in my listing presentation. Our listings sell at 99.1% of list price, while the average in our MLS is 95.4. On a $275,000 house, that's a $10,000 net gain to you. So all of a sudden, that 1 percentage point that was really important to them might not be so important to them, because they're stepping over $100 bill to pick up a 10 at that point, right? Now, when the situation of commission is right at the forefront, and sometimes they'll ask you that right out of the gate. You walk in the door, that's what they ask. There's a couple different ways around it. If somebody says, well, this other agent's willing to do it for 4 or 5, and I'll say, that's really odd. How quickly did they offer that? As soon as I asked, it's like, how hard do you think they're going to be willing to negotiate for your money when they just gave theirs away? And I'm not saying it with a snide, attitude or anything like that. I'm being really matter of fact when I say that. And then when I sit down with them, and the commission discussion comes up about half the time for me. The other half time, I never hear a peep about it, because I've convinced them through what we do, we're well worth the price, right? So
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
If you're calling for the appointment, if this is a relationship that you've had and been nurturing, like this is someone that was considering for months of listing, and weren't ready for whatever reason, and you're calling for the appointment,
right?
And at that point, if they're saying, like, listen, I'm not sure what you charge for commission, but that's going to be really important to me. Like, I know that I can go to a discount broker.
Yeah. And I always say, I'm happy to talk about it, and we're flexible. Let's get together and we can have that discussion. I never want to have that discussion about pennies on the phone, because I know once I get face to face, I've got eye contact, body language, and I'm building personal rapport with you. My chances go way up.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I go on a listing appointment, I almost bat 1,000. I almost walk out of there every time in a competitive situation, because I know what their issues are usually ahead of time. And if commission's one of them, I'm ready to hit that. But generally, your biggest two objections on a listing are commission and list price, right? So let's stay on the commission thing for a second. So we're sitting at your kitchen table. We've walked through the house. I've gone through my dog and pony show, and we're talking about comps. And then all of a sudden the commission discussion comes up. I literally will turn over a piece of paper, and I'll do it right now. Whatever I happen to be looking at that moment. You see that?
Got it.
There's 6 circles. Each one of those circles represents a point in commission. So then what I do is I say, okay, here's how the commission works. When we put your house on the market, these 3 are gone. They're gone to the buyer's agent who procures the buyer for your property. This one goes to pay me. This one goes to pay the IRS and my broker. And this one goes to pay your marketing costs. Which one of those do you want me to take away?
Write that down.
So, I mean, that's enormously powerful when you tie it into what we do from a direct marketing standpoint. We show them what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like right now, I have a listing that's going live right now in North Fort Worth. And the lady is literally texting me before I jumped on here. And she said, will the dollhouse view be available on Zillow? This is our Matterport that we do. We own our own camera.
Dollhouse view.
Everyone I sent it to thought it was incredible. And then she said, your pictures are amazing. I said, it took us forever to find a photographer we love. We spare no expense, blah, 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 blah. Everything I do is driven, A, to get them the biggest bottom line, to provide them the best possible experience, because I want business off their experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. So the commission thing, that's kind of an easy deal. Now, I will bend. So if we're in a neighborhood, if it's a listing on the corner of Pennsylvania and Southridge, it's going to get 5 million cars a day driving by it, and it's in high demand, I'd be willing to take a break on the commission, but generally we don't. No way. I mean, we're worth what we're paid, and our results prove it. So for example, the slide that I mentioned just a minute ago, where it shows our listing performance versus the average agent, and I'm boastful about what we say. I'm not like in your face braggy, but I say there's a reason we sold 408 homes this last year. There's a reason we have over 400 5-star reviews on Zillow. Most of our business comes from repeat and referrals from repeat and past customers. People trust us with their real estate transaction. So it's really important to make sure they understand that you are doing as good a job as you possibly can, because you're counting on the review, and you're counting on referrals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can we go back to the appointment, the nurture appointment? There, no matter what, if it's is it always closed for the appointment? It would be the theme to handle any objection in setting an appointment.
Always close for the appointment in any sort of phone call you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about very little over the phone. I want to get face to face. That goes with buyer leads too, internet leads, same thing.
So are we? So if we're on the phone, and Jay, okay, I'll jump into it. Jay, we've been I know we've been talking, we've been considering, and there is Smarty McGenius Pants from Cratham Realty. He's the one that's always, we see his signs in the neighborhood constantly, and I'm thinking that we're gonna head that direction instead.
Okay. I would, here's something cool that kind of talks about that. So when you're in an open house, or you meet somebody who says, oh yeah, we got an agent, one of my favorite things to say is, oh yeah, who is that? Because we're top producers in the area, and I know most of the other top producers. And usually they'll say your name and you don't know who it is, which is a genuine reaction. You're like, oh, I don't recall who that is. So you're kind of downplaying their success. But you're also building yourself up, telling them we're top producers in the area. And by the way, your team is the market center. If you're an individual agent, if you're on a small team, it doesn't matter. Your numbers are the market center's numbers. So in the case that you mentioned, and the specific example is applicable to this area right behind us in my neighborhood as well. There's an agent who has owned that neighborhood for 25 years. I won't mention any names, but I'll literally say, hey, I understand. I know that person. He or she is great. They're super friendly. Let me show you what our performance is versus theirs.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, the numbers don't lie. So that's something that I point out is the paths and the math. The truth is totally 100% in these numbers. It's not something I made up.
That's awesome. There is, and then you have time. Then you have time to prepare all of it, right? We always feel like we want to be prepared, but no, we're going for the appointment. Just that. Yep. So, all right, you've been I've been considering selling, wasn't ready for whatever reason, and you're following up with me, and I run into somebody that I think they're going to buy the house. I'm 99% sure. So before we hire a realtor and list, we're going to see if we're going to make sure that they're going to buy the house first. So we have to pay commission.
Okay. Yeah. So no, hey, I totally understand. This kind of goes into almost a FSBO script. I understand why you do that. It's clearly about dollar signs. I hope that works out for you, but I don't want you to sell yourself short. Let me sit down and show you what we could probably get you for your home, because our goal every time is to get multiple offers, and that's where your price starts going up. Let's sit down and see if that's even a feasible option for you before you commit to selling your home to someone else. So I don't want you to make a bad decision at a weak moment.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. The last part, bad decision on a weak moment. That would have been my question. Like, all right, we've bought and sold 15 houses before. I mean, I think we're gonna at least look at what this offer might be first.
Yeah. So there's another thing you can say about that. Okay, great. Who's going to facilitate the sale from a contractual standpoint? Do you understand how all that works? Just starting to ask questions and create a little bit of doubt. And by the way, I've heard that objection a million times, and only one time has it ever happened. And it was a listing appointment I had in Shady Shores about 4 years ago. Went on it. It was great. It was awesome. 3 days later, the people had ghosted me and finally called me back and said, hey, our neighbors just bought it for cash for their daughter and her family. I'm like,
one time.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I really can't beat that. You know what I mean? That's one of the losses I had that year. And oh, well, you dust yourself off and get on to the next appointment. But yeah, so it's to create a little bit of doubt. And I'm not saying fiction by any stretch, but just let them know what the road ahead may look like. But more of their decision is going to be based on potential bottom dollar.
All right. If we go back to the appointment, you're on the appointment. You've done the whole thing. You're always closing them, or are you always recommending that they speak to other agents again?
I'll mention it one time, speaking to other agents, but I'm really specific. And I say, I encourage you to talk to 3 or 4 agents, and at least 3 are probably going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. In fact, they may ask you right out of the gate, what do you want to sell your home for? And that's the number they know they have to have you at to get your listing and get a 6-month sign in the yard. And there are some agents, like it or not, I don't share this widely, but we all know there are some agents who will take a listing at any price because they're going to convert buyer calls off of it. And the longer the sign sits in the yard, the better. You become a marketing vehicle for that agent. We're in the business of getting homes sold, not listed, period. And we're expert marketers. We're passionate about what we do. I tell the sellers all the time, I could sell tires. It doesn't matter. My job is marketing your home and getting in front of as many eyes as I possibly can.
Love it. Okay. So you're you're closed. What's the last thing you go over, and what's your ask?
So when I wrap it all up, generally there aren't a whole lot of questions that haven't already come up during the course of discussion. And it's always funny because I always talk with several agents. Sometimes I can see the other agent's stuff sitting on the kitchen counter. Sometimes they'll volunteer and say, well, we're meeting with 2 other people after you. I always kind of close with, I feel really good about this. How do you guys feel right now? And generally they're like nodding and giving positive body language, or flat out saying, yeah, it feels awesome. I was like, why don't we get started? We have a lot of work to do to get us kicked off on the right foot and make sure we come on the market with a bang. Well, we've got 2 other agents we're going to meet with. You know what? If it would help you out, I know that's an uncomfortable phone call to make. I'm happy to make that phone call and cancel those appointments for you.
And okay, but Jay, no, I mean, I should be the one to do that. No, I don't want to do that, but I don't want you to do it either. Are you going to me?
It's a very common situation I find myself in, and it's a very cordial phone call. It's, hey, Jesse, I know you had a listing appointment tomorrow morning at 9:00 on Southridge. I just wanted to give you a shout, let you know that I'm already going to list their home. We've got a listing agreement in place. I'd love for you to bring any buyers you potentially may have. And if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. And I go through that verbiage with them. So they know I'm not calling you going, hey, Jesse, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Rubbing your nose in it or whatever.
right.
And usually they're pretty good about it. And there have only been about 3 or 4, a small handful of times I've actually made that call and they've wanted me to.
Yep.
And generally they'll text them or leave them a voicemail or something like that and kind of cancel the appointment.
How are the agents with that you did? That
I've never had anybody throw it back in my face. I've never had anybody be nasty. Again, it's only 4 or 5 in 15 years.
right.
But I've never had anybody go ballistic. Now I have had them call the sellers right back right after I got off the phone.
Sure.
And then typically the sellers will see them calling and avoid it.
Right. You've already had
Nobody
the
likes
call.
the confrontation, right?
That's so funny. That's great. So we've gone through the whole thing. We're both feeling pretty good about it. Go ahead.
Sec. One thing I always tell people when I'm leaving is, as I mentioned, when you're speaking with other agents, if there's something you guys discussed or they brought up that's important to you that we didn't talk about, let me know. I know we've covered a lot of information. This is a bit overwhelming, but if something comes up that was important to you, give me a shout.
Yeah.
Because you want a chance to address that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So much of the strength when you're walking away from a listing appointment you didn't close on site is about the rapport you built while you were there, the level of trust you built up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that's done through that 10-minute walkthrough before you even sit at the table.
Right. All right. So you're the last agent that we met with. They're feeling good. If I were to say, Dave, you blew everybody else out of the water. I don't, if we're gonna list our house, we would list it with you.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to sleep. We just need to sleep on it. Just need to sleep on it.
No,
And at that point, if you were feeling like you did not uncover something, is my
mm-hmm.
question. That in building rapport, like if there's something else missing, what's the question?
I'm flat out going to ask. Hey, sleeping on it tells me there's maybe an unanswered question or two. What's on your mind? Let's get that out. Let's talk about it. And I always tell people the only silly question is the one you don't ask. So let's make sure we all understand each other. And something I also say to people in a listing to earn trust is, one thing you'll find with me is that we play with the cards face up. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to know, whether I think you want to hear it or not, because it's important to your transaction, period. We're not going to play games. And our success speaks for itself. So our clients are generally pretty happy after the sale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm a very nervous person, and I just feel like I still feel like I need to find the next house before we put this on the market. I've got to find the next thing.
Okay, so we're talking about a contingency situation.
Yeah. So where I'm selling with you, you're on a listing appointment, and I'm going to buy with you too.
Okay.
Can we please do that first? I just need to do that first before I sign anything.
Yes, we can. But here's what we need to do. There's a strategy around that. We need to have all of our ducks in the row on your current home, so that when you find the home that you're in love with and you have to have it, we can go live on the market that day. I'm assuming, of course, we're contingency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we write an offer on the property you love and your home's not even on the market yet, your offer is generally not worth the paper it's written on, especially if they've got more than one offer. That's the first one tossed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
So that's
explained that ducks in a row. I mean, that's a week of marketing and preparation. And
well, not only that, so we kind of use it when we've been talking to people during COVID who have talked about listing their house and not wanting to, and just kind of on the fence about it. We have been telling them, let's go ahead and get everything ready right now, so that when the time is clear and the clouds have lifted, we can click submit on MLS and go live.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and start getting repairs made. Let's go ahead and get pictures scheduled. Let's go ahead and have the roof looked at. All your warranty work for the HVAC and pool you just had redone. Let's get all that. Let's preload it into MLS. Let's just have it all together, so that the day the smoke does clear, or you find the home that you have to have, we're not scrambling to find that, because then it gets messy. So in other words, let's do all the work we possibly can until it's go time.
That's great.
And by the way, you can get them under a listing agreement at that point too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the most important part, and knock it out a couple of weeks for a start date of whatever, July 25th, whatever it might be. And just have it in place and amend it if you need to.
Yeah. there, I want to talk about your take on uncertainty and how you drill it down to what are you like, all right, what are we really afraid of here?
Mhm.
Um, if someone is just is genuinely just worried about getting sick or getting someone else sick, that's not what I'm talking about. If I'm being really general and I'm like, it's just the market's just uncertain, nobody knows what's going to happen,
Mhm.
not thinking about selling anymore right now.
So there's a book that I read. It's about relationships, but it's called Starve Stuff, and it had this theory in it. And I've actually heard it a couple of times before. It's not real estate or business; it's just about relationships, and how when there's a dispute with people, there's a fire, and then there's all this smoke above the fire. That generalized statement, if I'm not attacking to figure out what's causing the flame, I'm just up here in the smoke, we're not going to get anywhere, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
chasing our tail, we're on a hamster wheel with no off ramp. So
Okay.
I'm going to continue to ask more specific questions and drill down. Say, you're talking about uncertainty in the market. Tell me a little bit more about what you're hearing. Where are you learning this? What are your concerns?
Well, I haven't got any answer on what's happening to prices, and that makes me nervous. I need to
Mhm.
know where we're going.
So here's a really great script for people right now. And everybody who's worked with a seller has probably heard this, or a potential seller. Well, I don't want to sell right now because the prices are ridiculous to buy. And hey, I understand your concern. Empathy first. I understand where you're coming from, but realize the market that you're selling in is also the market that you're buying in, right? So it's essentially a wash. You're going to get top dollar for your house, and you're going to pay more than you probably would or want to in a normal balanced market. But in a normal balanced market, you're going to get 15% less for your listing and pay 15% less for your new purchase. So it's an apples to apples toss
Mhm.
up situation when you go at it like that. Now, somebody who's thinking about selling and moving out of the area, man, they're banking because they're
Mhm.
cashing out for top dollar here and going somewhere else where the market might not be as hot and appreciating at 11% a year or something ridiculous like we are.
Right.
The little things like that, but I'm always trying to get down to what the pain point really is. Like there's blood in the water. I want to get to the wound.
Yep. There is. Has anyone ever talked about like not listing now because they're anticipating, whether they're correct or not, anticipating prices to increase? Maybe they can get more money. They're not in a hurry. They can get more money.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And investors are big on that. So people who've had, buy and hold properties for years. Well, I'm not going to do it because who knows what prices are going to look like. And I say, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from. Realize that our normal appreciation in a balanced market is 3.8%. And over the last 6 years, we've been doing this. There have been 12-month blocks in the last 6 years where we've appreciated at 14%. That's California. And my big fear is the longer we do this, the harder we're going to do this. So
Mm.
we have a lot of sellers right now, very similar to the situation you're in, a lot of absentee owners who live out of state, and they're seeing the writing on the wall. And they know that a market shift or a correction is probably going to come sooner than later. And it's a risk the longer you hold out for it. Now, I wish I had an 8 ball and I could tell you exactly what that looks like because I'd be retired on a beach right now. But my 15 years in the business and thousands of homes sold has kind of taught me to look for these cycles. So little things like that. In fact, I've got a listing in Hickory Creek Ranch right now, exact same situation. The guy's owned it for 17 years. And finally, he called me and said, I've had this thing. I went to UNT. My parents bought it for me. I've had it rented out for 13 years that I haven't lived there. And I wonder if I could sell it now or should I sell it now?
Hmm.
And we're on the market. In fact, just had a contract fall through. So if you have a buyer,
Right. But that's so good, y'all. You're lucky Diana's recording this for us because
now something, by the way, that's also really cool when you go into a listing situation. There's a ton of strength in being able to control the actions and sentiment of somebody by what you say and how you say it.
mm-hmm.
So what I do when I go out is I take their old MLS sheet if I can find it, and I kind of do it quick and dirty. Gosh, they paid 130 grand for this house, and we're going to list it for 270. 6 years later, I'm going to plant a subliminal seed when we
That's
sit down at the
exciting.
table, and I say, I found your old MLS sheet. You've made a killing on this house. So it might pull them down out of wanting to be $5,000 over price when they realize, holy crap, I've appreciated it like 42% in 6 years on this house.
Mm,
So I
that's
just little things you say to try to drive the behavior and mindset of that person. And by the way, those little types of things only come with experience and repetition and doing it over and over and over.
mm-hmm. Um, so if I'm brand new,
Mhm.
And I do run into friend database, a person that's in my database, somebody I know that they're getting ready to list their house. They don't want to tell me that I'm inexperienced, and they're not going to.
Mhm.
So they say, you know, we're gonna go. I think we're gonna go with the person that you know that sold us the house
Mhm.
years ago, right? So, and thank you, Deanna, thank you, Jay, but yeah, we're gonna go with the person that sold us the house.
Yeah. So that's a pretty common thing. If the agent was good about keeping in touch with their clients, if they have been and they've got a really good relationship,
Mhm.
it's a battle I don't fight for a long time because it's probably pretty solid. But the reality is most agents don't keep in touch with their past buyer clients. And
Mhm.
if you do come across that objection, say, hey, I understand why you feel that way. I've had clients who felt like that before. And what they found after sitting down with me was their bottom dollar was more important than using the agent that sold them that home.
Mhm.
Let's sit down and let me show you what we do that's different. I don't know your agent very well, but let me show you what we do that's far different than most of the agents out there. And by the way, if you're new, remember your market center is your team. So if you need stats, and I think one of the worst things people do is ever tell a prospect, oh yeah, I've been in this for like 4 months now. And no, don't do it. Seriously.
I
The
mean,
only time,
and people ask you, how long have you been a real estate agent, right? I
well,
know.
I mean, if they point blank ask you, say, my team's been in it for, good Lord, 25 years. I've been with them for 6 months.
That's great. Did you hear that? I'm looking at y'all. Um, yeah,
And
that's
by the way, there's strength in numbers. There's a reason that my team sells 22% of the real estate in Denton when there are 12 major brokerages.
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what the stat is. I just pulled it off the top of my head, but I know it's around there.
10.8% highest in market share, already on pace with the company
There
nationally.
you go. And there's a graphic you guys publish every once in a while that shows the bar graph of our production versus the next two or three that aren't even close.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty telling stuff.
A new one will come out shortly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's great to have as a visual when you're sitting down with somebody.
This lore, this story that the graphic Diana will post, we just got the numbers yesterday, is it's the best metric that you can use. It shows that we, of the listings that we take, we sell, I think it's 21% more of our listings and we're outpacing the market by, they're like -1 or something like
That's
that.
massively impressive. And again, it's empirical data. It's not a theory. It's hard facts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
We
the
sell.
best part.
Why should you hire me? We sell because we do our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the gist of that story. That's awesome. Tell me something, Deanna. I know that you're calling like crazy. Oh, I love when I get to call you out,
Jan
Deanna.
and I have had a bunch of good conversations about scripting.
Yes, yes. I love calling you anytime I get a chance, or even asking questions. And if your name comes up on my caller ID, I just about jump.
You're a goofball. No, give me one. Let me. And so for everyone here, tell me something that you've talked about. What have you asked, Jay?
I guess what my biggest issue is that some of them won't even let you come out to view the property. They if they realize you're a realtor, I can't get past like the initial, like I use his script for everything, and I
Mhm.
can't get past the initial part where it's like where you're where you start to ask the questions about the realtor. I gotta find the script.
Well, something I hear a lot of times I'll get a phone call or I'll be prospecting and talk to somebody who said, well, we're thinking about selling, but we're going to kind of get the house ready and stuff first before we want to meet with anybody, and say, I totally understand where you're coming from. By the way, empathy is a big part. Let me come out. I'm not a high pressure person. I'm not bringing anything with me. Let me come out and just make some suggestions for things you can do on the super cheap or even free. They're going to make your house shine and increase your market value. And at that point, remember,
In my brain when you
all,
said I'm not bringing anything with me. By the way.
yeah, I mean, I'm not bringing paperwork or anything like that. I just want to come out and make some suggestions. We're not high pressure. We've managed to sell 408 homes in the past 12 months by not being high pressure, but being very consultative with people and helping them out. So I can come out, and an example I'll use when I'm talking to them is, some people will say, well, I'm doing things to the house. And I always say, stop. Before you start dumping money into capital improvements like flooring and countertops and stuff like that, you're generally not going to get dollar for dollar back. Let me come take a look at it and make some suggestions based on my 16 years of doing this. And I always throw out an example. For example, some people say, we want to put new granite in the kitchen. Well, you're going to go spend $6,000 on that granite. And a potential buyer who walks in, their first reaction might be, why the hell did they pick that kind of granite? It's disastrous. I'm gonna have to pay $10,000 to get it replaced. So let's think of some other ways we can maximize your market value without pouring money into it.
How do you get past the point? Like when I get to the point in your script that it says, how have you had a lot of interest calls or showings on the house? I can't get past that because then they're like, are you a realtor? Do you really have a person to show me?
Are you talking about calling expireds?
FSBOs.
Oh, FSBOs? Yeah. So,
Yes.
well, no. So the deal and you and I talked about this, Deanna, is when I call a FSBO, my intro script is the same thing every single time. Hey, it's Jay down the street here at Keller Williams. By the way, I try to localize myself down the street here in Denton at Keller Williams. In other words, I'm not calling you from a call center in Charlotte. I'm localizing myself. And I say, I happen to drive by your house. I hadn't even noticed it being on the market. My team sells more homes than just about anybody here in Denton. I'd like to know about everything that's on the market. Tell me about your house. And then they just start rattling off things. You ask a few questions. How long have you had it listed? You want to get some background information, right? Because you know the average threshold for a FSBO person is about 14 to 21 days. After 21 days, they've had it. So one of my questions is, I'd love to come by and take a look at it. Do you mind if I come take a look? I want to share the details of your home with my team and with my office as well. Again, I'm closing for a face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get out there and you're having a face-to-face conversation, I start asking questions about what's the feedback been like? How's the showing? How have they been? What's the volume of showings look like?
Oh, it's busy. A lot.
Yeah. Something that I also told you about, Deanna, we do as well. We offer to do open houses for FSBO people.
I still can't, like, they usually will shut me down immediately. Like, like trying to get off. I had one hang up on me. And
oh yeah, you're going to get people like that. There's no way around that. You can't fix stupid, right?
Yeah.
And like expireds, people that expired at midnight last night, those are the ones that are most likely to hang up on you today because they've been called by 7,000 realtors this morning. All of them saying, I can do better than your last agent. But so use your strength in numbers, Deanna, from the market center and say, we sell the majority of homes here in Denton. I want to know about everything that's on the market so I can share it with my team. And then you start asking the questions from there.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. If they're either going to just hang up on you or you're going to get a yes.
And something else you can tell people like that.
I'm getting good at getting hung up on, so it's okay.
It's all good. You know what your attitude needs to be when you get hung up on? Next.
Oh well.
Next call.
Yeah.
Right? It's in the past. I don't even care about it. It doesn't even move the needle. I'm on. I'm on to the next one. So one thing I do say to expireds and FSBO is, people who have gone FSBO or had trouble selling with their first agent, a lot of times come to us. We specialize in it. It's what we do. We're kind of known as the people who take a home that didn't sell with their first agent, repurpose, repackage all the marketing, relaunch it, and get it sold. Same thing with the FSBO. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you get the opportunity for that face-to-face, or you get to hold the open house, Deanna, you're the seller. I'd love to hold an open house for you this weekend. It won't cost you anything. I'll put all the signage out. I'll put all the marketing out. I'll give you the feedback from the showings. And the worst thing that's going to happen to you, Deanna, is you're going to burn 2 hours of your time that you might not get back, but you might pick up a buyer lead or 3 off of it. And then when that person hits their break point in a week and they're sick of the FSBO thing, who's the first person they're going to call to list? Right.
So why, would they ask you, if they asked you, why would you do that? What's in it for me? What's in it for you, rather?
Oh, because I say,
you get buyer
perfect scenario. My marketing and the signage and the directionals and all that will bring a buyer into your house. You've already indicated you'd be willing to pay our buyer agent commission. And worst thing that happens to me is I come out here and I work my database and my leads and try to invite people out to your open house. I mean, the worst thing that happens to me is I lose 2 hours of my life. But the best thing is I pull a buyer in here, or I'm calling a buyer in my database as I'm sitting here on site, or that I've invited before the open house, and I actually find the buyer for your house. That's what my goal is.
Okay. Yes.
And again, this comes down to doing what other agents don't, won't, or can't.
Mm-hmm.
Other agents don't do things because they're too expensive. They won't do things because they're too lazy, or they can't do things because they're unaware that vehicle even exists. Because the reality is the average agent in our market sells 7 houses a year. The average agent, when they list a property, throws a sign in the yard and waits. There's no strategy behind it. It's literally put the sign in the yard and cross your fingers. And in this market, you will sell the house doing that, but can you sell it as high as you possibly could? And by the
Mhm.
way, remember your commission goes up as the sales price does. So I'm very motivated to get multiple offers and push that price.
Mhm. There, little tweaks. You see the you know that they're excited about it. They would take information from you. Let's say this was a FISBO there, and it's just the classic, you know, between baseball, jobs, everything. I'd love the information. Send me the information. I do not have time for the consult.
Yep. Send it out. Say, hey, I know you're overwhelmed. And I know it must be hard selling this home on your own with such a schedule. I'm going to follow up with you. I'll send you some information. And by the way, I've got a form email that I send out to anybody I talk to about selling their home that's on the fence, or somebody I feel like I need to close hard to get a face-to-face with. And I literally cut and paste it. The only thing I change is good morning or good afternoon. That's it. Great to talk to you on the phone. Here's a little more information about my team and our performance that we discussed briefly on the phone. I'm going to follow up with you down the road, but if you do have questions about any of this stuff, let me know. I've got links to our reviews in there. I've got links to our map of sales in the area if it's applicable. You know, if we're talking Burleson, I might not include the map of sales, but something I did in that email script that I also do on the phone with people, especially buyers, is when I said, I'm going to follow up with you down the road, but if you have questions about anything we've talked about or anything I've just sent you, I'm right here all the time. When I sign off from somebody who stonewalls me on a phone buyer lead, I just can't break through. I can't get traction. I can't get a face-to-face. That's what I say. No problem. I'm going to call you down the road, but if you have questions about what you're seeing here, let me know. I'm here to help. So I told him I'm calling him back. I'm going to follow up with down the road. Down the road, I didn't say when. It might be next week. It might be next month. And then between, I'm going to follow up with down the road, but if you have questions, let me know. I left no gap for them to object to me calling them back. I didn't give them the opportunity to say, no, don't call me. Now, on very brief occasions, they will say, you know what, don't reach out to me. I'll call you when I'm ready. But it's very, very infrequent.
It's awesome.
So it's, again, it's about the words you use and how you use them, right? Because don't act, especially when we can flip over to buyer scripts or keep down the FISBO trail, it doesn't matter. I don't ever ask yes or no questions. Because generally a consumer's first response is always going to be no. It's a defensive response, right? Even if it's not really no, they're going to say no because you're in their space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to go to. I want to move to buyers, and I've got one more question.
Okay.
If you've gone through the whole thing, you're on a listing appointment, and you are going to list this house, what's your go-to for? All right, Jay, I see that, I get the data, I see the comps, but why would it not make sense just to try to start a little bit higher?
That's a great. And by the way, that's the number one objection. That's probably 80% of the time I'm in a listing. Prime example is this house I just talked to you about that I'm texting with the client about. She's going live today. This is a small house. It's like 1,350 square feet. It's in basically Alliance area, Fossil Creek, and super macked out. She did a great job in this house. Looks awesome. Nice neighborhood, the whole 9 yards. And because of that, I suggested a list price at the top of the price range in terms of sold comps over the last 6 months. And I pay really close attention to the price per square foot because appraisers do. Anybody who says, well, man, I'd really hope we came up with 239 as our list number. And she yesterday said, you know what? I slept on that. I want to go at 244 or 249. I said, okay, let's do this. I'm not scared to push the market more than I think it will bear, but there's two things we need to discuss. If we get 249 for your house, we're going to get caught in a situation where we might not appraise. If that's the case, the buyer typically comes back and says, well, I'm not going to pay more than the house is worth. And they say it's worth 235. However, we do things, again, that other agents don't want or can't to try to circumvent the appraisal issue altogether. We're going to find comps, whether in this neighborhood or the neighboring neighborhoods, that best support our value. And as soon as that appraiser makes their appointment, I'm sending them my comps and I'm calling them. Hey, it's Jay at Keller Williams. Thanks so much for going out to our house on Prairie Heights today. If you've got questions, I just want you to have my cell phone number. This lady has done everything to this house. It's immaculate. By the way, I've left some comps for you on the kitchen counter as well. Now, remember, an appraisal takes about 4 hours, right? It's an hour on property. It's an hour to and from in the car. It's an hour pulling comps, and it's an hour filling in the form. If I save them 25, 30% of their time by giving them the comps, and they usually give it a quick once over, and they're like, oh yeah, these are all from the subject neighborhood, same square footage. Okay, great, I'm using these. They may not dig deeper and find out that the average sold price per square foot is 111, and I gave them ones at 118 and 119. Now, it's not a bulletproof strategy, but it definitely helps. Now, something else I say to people is, we're 239 puts you as the most expensive household in the last 6 months in terms of price per square foot, but I'm not afraid to push it. Let's have a handshake agreement that will go on at 244 for 2 weekends, for 10 days. And if we don't have some major traction after that second weekend, we're going to get together and revisit that number. Because what we don't want to do, Jesse, is be on the market for 45 days where the average days on market is 14. Because at that point, your property is almost stigmatized. People keep driving by it or flipping through it online and saying, something's wrong with that house. It's still there, right? We just priced ourselves right out of having a potential buyer. So, I always try to approach things not from a real militant timeline driven standpoint, except for getting the listing ready and launching the marketing and everything. But like when I said, let's give it a run for 2 weekends. Then if we don't have something cooking, let's sit down and revisit that number. Let's have a handshake agreement that will do that. I'm not saying, okay, but if we don't have an offer, here's an amendment to our listing agreement, adjusting our price down to 235, like I'm asking you to right now on this day. No, guys, we overcomplicate the crap out of real estate. We're talking about being able to talk to people and knowing people, and a commodity. It's an object. That's it. That's why my scripts are so stinking simple. I love bold, but man, you plug that flash drive in, you listen for 4 days to try to get to the end of the scripts. Whoa, we are trying to, this is so much simpler than people make it out to be. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, let's talk about buyers.
Okay.
Or are you prospecting for buyers, or how, or
we generally get buyers coming in through our website. And the average agent will call a buyer and say, hey, is this Jesse?
Hey, yes.
Usually they say, who is this?
Yeah.
But regardless, that's the worst thing you could say when you call somebody is ask them if that's who it is. So instead, here's what an average agent does. Hey, is this Jesse? Yes. Well, hey, Jesse, I saw you just sign up on my site to look at homes. Are you in the market? It's a yes or no response.
Yeah.
If you say no, most agents say, okay, well, if you have questions, let me know. They don't even remember your name when you've hung up. They remember nothing. You just burn 28 seconds of your life making that call. So instead, I call up and I say, hey, Jesse, this is Jay down the road here at Keller Williams in Denton. And I noticed you just inquired about information on this home on Oakmont.
Yeah,
I'd love to get you out to take a look. What time would work better, this afternoon or tomorrow morning?
Actually, I'm still looking. I'm looking at different houses. I'm not ready to go into a house yet, though. Thank you.
I use that one. It works.
It works.
That one works. After my conversation with you, I use that one.
The key to talking to buyers on the phone is to ask open-ended questions. And Jesse, when you gave me that objection, the next thing I would have said was, Jesse, tell me about your situation. It's so open. It's so wide open. And, a lot of times people will say, 90% of the time people will say, oh, we're just looking. That's a stock response. There's really only 3 objections you get from buyers on the phone. We're just looking, we're saving money, or we're in a rental. We're renting right now. Saving money and working on credit, same thing, or we're in a rental. 90% of the time it's we're just looking. Because what do you say to somebody in a store when you're just browsing around and an employee comes up and says, can I help you? You say, oh, I'm just looking.
Good.
Yeah. And then you treat your person on the phone like they treat you in the store. Well, if you need anything, let me know. That's a passive activity. You just wasted 30 seconds of your life you'll never get back. So at least maximize your time you have on the phone with them, because a live audience is the best thing you can hope for, right? A live connection. So when somebody says they're just looking, I say, you know what? I'm in the business and I look at homes on my off time too. Or they say, I just like looking at homes. That's my response. I've got that sickness too. Tell me about your situation, Jesse. You mentioned you kind of just waiting around and looking around. What are you waiting for to break the right way for you guys to purchase a new home?
Oh, no, we're just started thinking about it. We're not waiting for anything. We're just not ready yet.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I totally get it. And we're not high pressure. We're known as the really kind of hand-holding group to walk people through. Let me ask you, have you bought a home before?
Yes.
You have bought a home. Okay, so you've been to the rodeo, you got the t-shirt, you know how this all works. So by the way, if you notice, that's the only yes or no question I ever ask. Because a lot of times with internet leads, the answer to have you ever bought a home before is no.
They're just looking around. Gotcha.
And people will say, no, I've never bought a home. So boom, your first time buyer script goes into play.
Yeah.
And I say, that's awesome, because 60% of our clients last year were first timers. We're known as the team who really walks people through this process. And at that point, again, I'm trying to close for a face-to-face. I want them in the office. I want to take them to get coffee. And my script for doing that is, Jesse, thanks for sharing all that information with me. I can promise you this process is not as daunting and scary as it might seem. Let's get together for a cup of coffee. I'll lay out how this whole thing works. And after 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to feel a whole lot more comfortable with what this looks like for you and your family. You want to get together at Starbucks this afternoon or tomorrow morning? I'm always closing for that appointment. The face-to-face is
and if
everything.
they're really not, and they're really just looking at that point, they're either going to hang up or they'll finally tell you,
Right.
I was right.
And that's what I talked about way back at the beginning of this, was sometimes you get stonewalled and you just can't break through. And that's okay, because that's somebody who's in your nurture and somebody you better be touching on a regular basis, because eventually they're going to buy a house. Why would it not be with you? But what I do say to you in that case where you stonewall me is, Jesse, it was great to learn more about your situation. Thanks so much for sharing. You've got access to everything in MLS in real time through my website. I'll follow up with you down the road, but if you see something you've got questions about or just the process in general, I'm here anytime. I'm going to shoot you a follow-up text and email just so you have that. And what I did there, I told you I'm following up down the road. I didn't say when. Might be a week, might be a month. And I didn't give you a chance to object to me following up with you. I said, if you see something you have questions about or just questions in general, give me a shout. That's what I'm here for. It's my job.
Great. Okay, thank you.
See, everybody's got this warm fuzzy, and then I've got a canned email I cut and paste to people that I talk to just like you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I've got them on a drip campaign. And it's amazing. Some of these people I've had on drip campaigns for 8 or 9 years. I don't remember them at all, but then eventually they'll respond to something. Hey, we're ready to pull the trigger. Seriously. And I'm dead serious. And then I'll flip back through the notes and go, well, hey, who the heck are you?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realize, oh my gosh, I talked to this person back in 2012, and this is what we talked about. So a good thing to do when you're trying to build rapport with people, obviously at a listing appointment, but even on the phone is, you guys have big plans this weekend. I'd love to get you out taking a look at some things that just hit the market. We've got a baseball tournament, which I know you do. Or we've got, kids soccer, whatever. Make a note of that, because when you follow up next week, Jesse, how was the tourney last weekend? How'd you guys do?
It sucked, but thank you.
Yeah. So what I did was I immediately connected the dots in her head to who I am. I'm not a stranger anymore.
Yeah.
As soon as I said that, boom. Not that we're tight buds, but I'm no longer some cold caller who called and doesn't know who she is or what she's about. So
and you're asking about my kid. I'll talk about that all day long.
Yeah. See? And people will, by the way, people will talk about their kids till they're blue in the face.
Yeah. That's awesome. What else do you hear? So I wrote down a question I don't want to forget to ask you. Mm-hmm. What percentage of your business, since the majority of those buyer leads are coming in through your website, what percentage of your business would you say is from that follow-up and from those nurtures?
Oh, so from our web traffic, we probably close 70 a year. Mm-hmm. And at least 90% of those are people that have been in our system over a year. You'll get every once in a while the nugget that drops in your lap, but most of these are long-term nurtures, and statistics show with long-term nurtures, it takes you a minimum of 8 call attempts to actually have a live conversation. Mm-hmm. And it also says that if you're not on that lead within the first 5 minutes it comes in, your chance of converting it drops by 85%. So speed to lead is absolutely critical. Once you've got them on the phone and you're under live fire, maximize what you're doing by having very simple but very effective scripting. Mm-hmm. And then your follow-up plan, the fortunes in the follow-up. Carissa was at Inman in New York City 6 or 7 years ago speaking about something on a panel. I wasn't there, but it was about web leads. And I think there were like 7,000 or 8,000 people in this room, and she's up there with 2 other people talking about internet leads. And some guy stands up at the open mic and says, well, we've had internet leads forever. We're paying for them, and they suck. And Carissa said, the conversion on internet leads isn't great, but I would contend it's your follow-up that sucks and not the lead. And it went viral on Twitter. And I heard about it. Like people were blowing me up. I'm like, oh crap, she's not going to get invited back. But that's the absolute truth. If your follow-up isn't bulletproof, don't waste your time and money doing it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a direct mail campaign. People think, well, I can just go blast out a month's worth of postcards to 2,000 people once. Save yourself the time and money. You got to do that over time. That's a 12-month minimum commitment every month. So you have to be consistent with this, just like anything else.
I'd say 80% is in the follow-up. right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking at a year, we've got the lead generation that takes a second. At the very, very end, it's when they decide to either buy or sell something. It's 7 to 10 weeks. Everything else is all of the other businesses in between. So
Yep.
it's
So
10.
when I talk to new people, I always tell them that everybody goes through this cycle, right? Where you're beating your head against the wall, you're backfilling your pipeline, you've got nothing to show for it. And then all of a sudden stuff starts happening. So you've got a tabletop and you got these dominoes stacked up, right? And they just keep falling off the end of the table as you're pushing them from this end. Some of them are closing, some of them are dying. It doesn't matter. But then all of a sudden, if you stop performing the activities it took you to get these dominoes, eventually the dominoes are going to run out. And every agent has been here before that's been successful. And the ones that are currently successful still make the same mistake. They stop performing the activities it took them to get that pipeline. And all of a sudden, the last domino falls off. And they're looking at themselves going, oh, crap. I have nothing under contract, nor do I have a prospect in sight for the next 2 months. It's a scary proposition. So that's why, and I know this is off the topic of scripting, but you have to create times and time block and be disciplined about your prospecting. You got to do it. Because we are in the lead gen business, not the real estate business.
And I mean, if we really did it, like if you were on the call yesterday, what did we learn about the number 12? If we're having 12 conversations a day, that'll lead to 2 closings a month. That's 24 units. If you're having 12 conversations a day and you stink at conversations, that will lead you 24 closings, really.
Yeah. And that's
data.
Yeah, new agents on our team, it's the same thing. We stick to the bold rule, 20 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And each week we're going to meet and we're going to talk about the 100 you had or didn't. If you didn't get to 100, why? What came up? Because the most important thing you can be doing is talking to people. Period.
Right.
Again, this business is simple, not easy.
Cami asked a question about do you wear a mask? Yes, it is an ordinance within a building. If you're within 6 feet of someone, we're told that yes, it's still safe. However, they put it on the business owners too. When everybody walks,
to enforce it once they're in, yeah.
I would treat people just like it's a business.
I ask right up front.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask them before the appointment, hey, are you mask people or not? You know,
That's
if you're more comfortable.
That's eye contact and everything. That's how you do your business is your eye contact and your.
Oh, I know. I get it.
Ah.
Yeah. No, the body language is huge and it's hard when your mouth's covered up.
So the guy at the AT&T store did this, and I've copied this as I've had people in my office. Is I'm wearing it at first, and I say, okay, I'm set up really, really good here. So if you're comfortable and you want to, you can be safe and take a mask off, and I'll do the same. But I'll follow your lead, and you're safe this way.
Yeah, and that's just it. I just always ask.
Yeah, and sometimes people have said, I'm good, I'm gonna leave it on, thank you, and I go, okay.
I've done presentations with masks,
okay,
like
good.
whatever. So it's the cost of doing business today.
Mm-hmm. We're safe doing that in here. So in a private office. Out there, everybody's wearing them. Sorry. That's great. What else do you guys have? What do you have for Jay?
Well, I'll jump on a couple more just objections from buyers that we hear. And really there are only 3. The one is we're just looking. 90% of the time, that's it. Be prepared for that. The other one is we're saving money or working on our credit. And the script for that is tell me what that looks like. Have you guys actually spoken to a mortgage officer to kind of get an idea what your credit looks like and drawn out a plan to get things on the right foot? And then you're trying to set them up with your mortgage person, right? Mm-hmm. Because most likely this is going to be a long-term nurture, but if you can provide that piece of value, because a lot of times people they think their credit sucks or they think they need more money than they do. And they're taking it upon themselves in their general Google search to figure out how to do it. You want to know if they've been with an expert or not. The other one is we're starting to see a lot more of is, well, we're in a lease right now. Okay, cool. Are you in a 6 or 12 month? When do you guys expire? And if you tell me you expire in August, Jesse, I'm like, that's like 2.5 months away. You got to give a 30-day notice. It usually takes about 30 days to close on a house. We need to get busy. But if they say, oh, we just re-upped for, we got 10 more months on our lease. And say, tell you what, if we found you the perfect home, would you be in a position to break that lease? Because most leases have some sort of a buyout clause. A lot of times it's called a reletting fee and it's equivalent to 85% of 1 month's rent. And by the way, when you buy a house, you generally don't make a mortgage payment your first month anyway. So if you found the perfect house, would you be in a position to do that? Well, you know what? That's a good question. I don't know. Let me find a copy of my lease. So I bet you'll find that in there somewhere. And again, you're just trying to provide anything of value
Mhm.
and establish some sort of a loose rapport over the phone and a reason, more importantly, to follow up. Always have something, an actionable item to follow up with.
And that's exciting. I mean, those people, if they're in an apartment, they really want a house. Yeah, and that's help. That is help, and that's exciting. They'll do it. They'll find
Yeah.
the lease. That's awesome. That's great. Did we get the third buyer objection?
Yeah. We're just looking,
Okay.
saving
got it.
money, credit, and apartment leasing.
Hey Jay, I just want to make sure you saw I'm copying all the comments from Facebook into the chat, so I'm hoping you're seeing them. So
I'm not
they're
seeing
not
them.
questions, or I would have popped in, but I just want to make sure you saw them.
Oh yeah, there they are. Nobody's badgering me or heckling. Good.
Nobody's heckling.
No, but we got some people over there watching, so I keep asking if they have any questions. I'll bring them back if they do.
Mm-hmm. And who has a partner? Like who is practicing with a partner or making calls with a partner? If you need, that's accountability, right? I know y'all are in coaching as well, and when you're making your calls, if you're not sitting right there with Melissa, but we can call each other, jump on our power hour. It's easier with a partner.
Yeah. So here's one thing I'll end with. That is so stinking important. I'm glad you brought it up, because if you're not practicing your scripts with a role play partner, you're practicing your scripts on your clients.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad mix.
And it's fun. I mean, it's fun. If more people are at home too, and we're gonna start seeing more and more people go back home again and shelter in place, and it's coming, it's gonna happen, and that's great. And jump on a Zoom and do that. I mean, for 10 minutes, it gives you energy. It's funny, make fun of each
The
other.
really cool role play partners, by the way, are the ones that you call and you just go right into it. You don't say, okay, here's our scenario. You just call them live fire bullets. And we have one of our agents, San Antonio, she'll call me and say, hey, I saw your house came off the market last night and I can't figure out why on earth you didn't sell. And we just go right into it.
I would love that. If any of y'all call me, I would love that. I love to be a role play partner. And we have to be a real one too.
Yeah, it's fun.
Don't feel bad and say, oh, okay, yes, I'd love an appointment, if you really wouldn't. Like, be a good
All right, guys, I'm happy to help. If you have any questions, I'm always here.
Jay, question.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah, Dennis.
Yeah, just one quick question there. Old guy like me can't copy fast enough. And so when you first started out, you said there were 4 things that you had with you, or 4 folders or whatever.
Yeah.
The iPad, I got the comp folder, but I missed the other 2.
The iPad, the comp folder. I have a glossy picture of the comps for them, photos. And then I have a folder with the listing paperwork and seller's disclosure.
Okay.
So I have 2 folders, a presentation, which is the glossy comps for them, and my iPad.
Great. I got one waiting on Zoom. Thank you, Jay.
You bet.
Jay, question.
Yeah, thank you.
On
That was awesome.
your scripts that you did with your YouTube series?
Yeah.
On the script on that one, when did you send those out? I keep looking for them and I can't seem to find them.
I think I sent them to you already directly, but if not,
You just sent me the expired and the FSBO. Was there more than that?
Yeah, there's buyer scripts, seller scripts, all that stuff.
Okay.
Shoot me an email and I'll form over to you.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, guys. See ya.